All right, how many of you need a handout? You need a handout. Keep your hands up until the ushers get to you. We have two handouts today. One is for the adults, and the other one is for the Kids Zone kids. The Kids Zone kids, hopefully you got a gift bag out in the lobby today. If you didn't, they're outside in the lobby. There's one there for you. It's got some goodies in it for you, some activities, things to do, and then also there's a handout for you in there as well. Now, Kids Zone is shut down for 2 weeks, today and next Sunday, for cleaning and preparation and doing all kinds of things. They're going to gear up and restart 2 weeks from today. So the kids will be in here today and next week. Now, here's the deal. With that handout that you have, you've got 5 questions on there. If you answer those 5 questions, you can get $200 for each correct answer that you put on that sheet. And I'm going to give you the answers as we go through the message today. Okay, so if you just listen to the message today, I'll give you the answers. Each one's $200. That's Kids Zone bucks, by the way. That's I should put that caveat in there because, but that's money you can spend in the Kids Zone store next door. Okay, so after the service is over, you can go out in the lobby, and there'll be Kids Zone workers out there. You can answer the questions to them or turn in your sheet. They will look at your sheet for every correct answer. Get $200 for the Kids Zone store. Okay, so that's what's going on there. Everybody got a handout? Okay, if you do, let's turn to Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5. And we're going to look at verse 8. Verse 8. And the verse says this: "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." That's found in Matthew chapter 5, verse 8. And kids, that's your first question. That's the verse you want to write down. Okay? Matthew 5, 8. Let's go to the Lord in prayer, shall we? Father, thank you so much for being the God that you are. You are, as we have heard already today, as we have already sung today, you are holy, 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 as the cherubim say all the time continually around your throne. We thank you, Father, for the fact that you are a God of righteousness and that you hold us to a higher standard than we would hold ourselves, or certainly that the world holds to us or holds to themselves. Father, I pray that you'd help us to see today that you are holy, that you expect us to be holy, that you command us to be holy as you are holy. Father, I pray that you'd help us to be pure in heart, that we may see you in various ways. May your Holy Spirit speak to us through your word today. May you draw us closer to each other, but especially closer to you. And when we leave here today, may we be recommitted to live a life of purity and holiness for you, that others may see you in us and not we ourselves, not seeing us try to be good people because we can't be. Father, I pray that you'd help us to surrender ourselves, our body, our soul, and our spirit, that you might use us, that you might live through us, that you might be glorified in us. May you be lifted up. May all be drawn to you as a result today. For we ask it all in Jesus' name, for his sake, and with thanksgiving. Amen. We're continuing with our series on the Beatitudes here in the book of Matthew. It's our summer series. It's coming to a close. We're already in August. This year is zipping by fast, and I am so thankful for that. But we are coming rapidly to the close of our series in the Beatitudes as well. And today we're talking about holiness. That's why it says be holy at the top, because that's what pure in heart means. And that's, by the way, that's your first blank. You've already filled it out. Blessed are the pure in heart. Remember what blessed means? Does anybody remember? Yes. Exactly. The word blessed means happy. It means happy. And kids, that's your next blank. Blessed means happy. So the Lord is saying, happy are those who are pure in heart. But pure in heart means a holiness in mind and soul as well as in body. We have a tendency to think that if we're holy, if we're pure, then it's talking about physical purity. Well, that's important too. But that's not the intent of this verse. because the Lord constantly addressed his critics, who happened to be the religious people, the scribes and the Pharisees, who were outwardly holy. They were outwardly religious. In fact, he criticized them for looking like sepulchres, for looking like mausoleums, for looking like tombs, which if you go to a cemetery that has tombs of that kind, and that seems like the nice cemeteries often have those things. The bigger they are, the more expensive the cemeteries are, the longer they've been around, the more tendency they will have to have mausoleums or tombs in them. If you go down to Green Lawn Cemetery, for example, they're all over the place, especially down in the center, right around the main mausoleum and chapel that Green Lawn has there. If you go down there, and you'll see all these buildings standing around it, they're from the wealthier families in town. Some of the names on those mausoleums and tombs will be well known to you from different businesses around town. But those tombs, if you look at them from maybe a short distance, maybe from here to the door or wherever you park along there or wherever you drive along the driveway, they'll look beautiful. Some of them are white marble. They look like they were just built last week. Fabulous looking buildings. But if you park your car and you walk up to that tomb or mausoleum, many of them have windows in them. I'm not sure why. Who's going to look out the window? But they've got windows in them. And you peek through the window if you can. The outside will be nice and clean, but most of them you can barely see through them because they're so dirty and dusty and filled with cobwebs and all kinds of stuff on the inside. And I don't know where all that stuff comes from. Where does the dust come from inside there? I mean, they're all closed in, but you can hardly see because of all the dirt and the dust and the grime everywhere. It's filthy. And that's what the Lord says, you scribes and Pharisees, you religious hypocrites, that's what you're like. On the outside, you look all fine. You look wonderful. You look like you're clean, well-built, solid marble structures, but on the inside, you're filthy, full of dead men's bones. So it's nice to be clean on the outside. It's nice to be pure on the outside. It's nice to be holy on the outside, but that's not really what really counts. The whole point of this whole this discourse, I should say, this Sermon on the Mount, as we call it, in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7, the point of this discourse of his, this message of his, the sermon of his, is about internal holiness. And that's why he says here in verse 8, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." John Brown, who was a 19th century Scottish theologian, said this: "Holiness consists in thinking as God thinks and willing as God wills." Wanting what God wants, thinking like God thinks. And if we get to that point where we want what God wants, that's when the Lord said, "You shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you." If you want what God wants, what you ask for will be what God wants, and God will grant that prayer. That's the whole key. That's why the Lord teaches that the thoughts of the heart, the prayers of the heart, the inward prayers are the ones that get answered the most often. In fact, I can't think or remember any prayer that I've ever had that was from the heart, internally prayed, that wasn't answered. Those deep-seated desires of the heart are what the Lord promised us back in the book of Psalms. He will give you the desires of your heart. And as I've said many times, that's a twofold verse. You can look at it in two different ways. Number one, He will put the desires in your heart. You will pray what the Lord wants you to pray because He put it in your heart to pray that way. And I could take you through 1 Kings chapter 18 where the Lord did that with the prophet Elijah. What Elijah prayed was answered because God put that desire in his heart. God actually told him what to pray. And that's what He does for us. But also, when you are where the Lord wants you to be, if you are in tune with the Lord, if you're walking step in step with Him as Enoch did in the book of Genesis, then you shall ask what you will and it shall be done. Because you're already in tune with Him. That's what He's talking about here. Holiness consists in thinking as God thinks and willing as God wills. The Lord talked a lot about holiness in Scripture. Let me just go back to Leviticus chapter 11 and just read a couple verses there, 44 and 45. For I am the Lord your God. The Lord's always reminding his people of who he is. We need to be reminded of who he is, and that's what Brother Harry did in his song this morning. He reminded us of who God is. We need to be reminded of that because we are forgetful and fickle people. For I am the Lord your God. Ye shall therefore sanctify yourselves. The word sanctify means set yourselves apart. Be holy. And ye shall be holy, for I am holy. Neither shall you defile yourselves with any manner of creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. For I am the Lord that bringeth you up out of the land of Egypt to be your God. Ye shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. He says it twice in those two verses. In this passage in Leviticus, in fact, the whole book of Leviticus, the Lord talked about the kind of food that they should and should not eat. Also, he talked about the kinds of clothes they should and should not wear. He talked about the kind of people they should and should not marry. He talked about the kind of things they should and should not do. He talked about the kind of ways they should and should not worship. He addressed every area of life. Now, some would say, well, wait a minute. That's Old Testament. That doesn't apply to us anymore. Those rules in the book of Leviticus were ceremonial laws. They don't apply to us. Those rules in Leviticus are about holiness. Holiness. The Lord says, I want you to do this and not that. I want you to not do this. I want you to do that. So that you can know the difference between clean and unclean, between what's holy and what's unholy. That's the point of the book of Leviticus. Yes, there are some things that we don't have to do today. I had a cheeseburger this week. Well, we won't talk about how many. But I don't eat kosher. You don't eat kosher. But the point is, there are things that are holy, there are things that are unholy, and we are to know the difference. We are to do what's holy and be what's holy. That's what he's talking about. That's the point of what he's discussing. But again, as I said, it's not about outward purity, it's about inward purity. The whole question of Leviticus is what would God do? WWGD. What would God do? We think about in terms of what would Jesus do. Same thing was true in the Old Testament. What would God do? We have to think like God would. We have to do what God would do in any given situation. Would God say this? Would God do that? Would God go there? Those are the kinds of things we need to think about and do. In Psalm 24, 3 through 6. Now, the 23rd Psalm you could all quote by heart. You all know what that says. This is the very next psalm. In verse 3, who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord, David said, or who shall stand in his holy place? And he answers his own question. He that hath clean hands and a what? A pure heart. Same thing we just read in Matthew, isn't it? Who hath not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully, he shall receive the blessing from the Lord. Blessing is, again, what? Happiness. And righteousness from the God of his salvation. This is the generation of them that seek him, that seek thy face, O Jacob. Now, let's think about that phrase, that seek his face. That is important. That's very key to this whole concept of holiness. Let me ask you a question, and don't answer it. Don't raise your hand. When you pray, how do you pray? What do you ask for? Do you ask for things? You want this material thing? You want that spiritual thing? You want that financial thing? You want that relational thing? You want this health thing? You want this? You want that? You want the other thing? You want the other thing? Don't we have a tendency to ask God for things? Back in 1979, I believe it was, when I was youth director here, we took the youth department to Life Action Ranch up in Buchanan, Michigan one summer. And it was a very unusual camp. I'd never been there before, didn't know what to expect. Normally, when we go to teen camp or youth camp, you have teens, the guys and the girls, and you have counselors. Counselors for the guys, counselors for the girls. The guy counselors go and stay with the guys in the guy cabins, and the girl counselors go with the girls and stay in the girl cabins. And you spend the whole week with them. You go to chapel, you go to dinner, you go to devotions, you do everything together. You bond together, and the youth directors and counselors minister to their own teenagers. Not so at Life Action Ranch. As soon as we got off the bus and registered, teens were taken this way, counselors were not allowed to go with them. Counselors went off in this direction. And the counselors were ministered to by the camp staff just as the kids were over here. We didn't see them all week. They were off doing their own thing. We were doing our own thing. Wow, that was different. I wasn't expecting that. But I learned something fantastic. I remember sitting in the grass next to a chain link fence with a bunch of other youth directors from different states, and there was a staff member who was leading the devotion, and he said something I will never forget. That was 41 years ago. He said this, then he explained it. He said, he asked me the same thing, asked all of us the same thing I just asked you. When we pray, we ask for things. But have you ever prayed and not asked God for anything? He went through this whole devotion. I'm not going to reteach to you, but he concluded with this thought. And I want you to think about it. You might even want to write it down, think about it later. This is what stuck with me. Seek God for God alone. That is, when you spend time in prayer with God, there are times when we have to ask for things. There are times when we have to confess things. There are times when we have to ask for forgiveness, or we have to ask for something we need, so maybe something for somebody else, something that somebody else needs. But have you ever spent time with the Lord just basking in His presence, seeking His face? Not something He can do for you, but just spending time with Him? Have you ever done that? How often have you done that? What percentage of your prayer life is spent doing that? That's what we're talking about. The more time you spend seeking His face instead of what He provides, the more holy you will be, the more separated you will be, the more sanctified you will be, the more pure in heart you will be. And that is what he's talking about here. Point number 2, they shall see God. You've already filled it out. That's the second half of the verse. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. What does that mean? They shall see God. I think there's 3 different ways to look at that. 3 meanings of seeing God. Number 1, 1 John chapter 3, verses 2 and 3. John says, Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when He shall appear, we shall be like Him. You know when we get raptured, which is the next event on God's prophetic calendar, by the way, and may it happen today. Some of you are wishing it would happen before I finish my next sentence. But when the rapture takes place, you and I will get glorified bodies, and I'm looking forward to that. Cheeseburgers forever, and we don't have to worry about, right? But we will get glorified bodies that will be like the Lord's body. Remember when He appeared to His disciples on that Easter evening? The doors were shut for fear of the Jews, yet there He was. He appeared right into the room. We'll be able to pass through walls. We'll be able to fly without a plane. I'm sorry? Yeah, I am. I knew someone would bring that up. I'm definitely afraid of flying. But the fear will be gone. He'll take that away from us. Yeah. We'll be able to ride horses out of heaven, Revelation chapter 19. And I've heard people say, I'm definitely afraid of horses. Well, that fear will be gone too. But you and I will be like Him. That's what that's saying. We will be like Him. For we shall see Him as He is, and every man that hath his hope in Him purifieth himself, even as he is pure. That's what that's saying. You know what that verse means? That's saying that if you are looking forward to the second coming of Christ, you are looking forward to the rapture with excitement and anticipation, that hope in you purifies you. You realize that? That's one of the things that keeps me clean and on the right path. Excuse me. I didn't drink enough water this morning. My throat is dry. I went to another camp. Well, I'm using a lot of camp illustrations today. None of these were in my notes, by the way. I remember going to Camp Camp Choff years ago up in Dalton, Ohio. And there was a speaker there who was talking about the rapture to us young people. And he did something really sneaky. He was talking about the fact that he's talking to teenagers. And of course, teenagers tend to experiment with things. Back then, it was smoking rather than stuff that kids are doing today. But a lot of people were smoking, and they would drink alcohol. And so he would talk about those things and said, where would you like to be in the middle of a puff when the rapture takes place? Can you imagine? Going, and then the rapture takes place, the horn blows, boom, you're in the presence of the Lord, and there he is, right there. What do you do with the smoke in your mouth? What are you going to do when the rapture takes place and you're right in the middle of a puff? What if you're right in the middle of a beer and the horn blows and you're right in the presence of the Lord? He said, bow your heads. We had an invitation. Every head bowed, every eye closed. And so everybody's head was bowed, every eye was closed. He was preaching, just continued giving the invitation, drawing it in. And right then, a trumpet blew. And he ducked behind the pulpit. That altar was packed. All kinds of teens went down that. They thought they missed the rapture. But seriously, if you are thinking about the rapture, thinking about the fact that the Lord can come back at any second, and poof, Christians will disappear all over the place. When you think about that, right now, what's going on in here? Are you scared by that? Does that make you nervous? Does that make you wonder? Or are you excited? Are you filled with anticipation? If you are excited about that, looking forward to that, with pleasure, that helps purify you. That helps make you holy, helps keep you holy. Since I became a Christian years ago, that has been one of the key factors in helping me stay close to the Lord, or get close to the Lord, as the case may be, because I don't want to be away from the Lord when the rapture takes place. I don't want to be ashamed when I stand before Him. So that's why John says this. The Cambridge Bible for Schools and Colleges says this: the Christian education is a gradual unveiling of God. That's an interesting phrase. That's why I included it. It means that the closer you grow to the Lord, the more you grow as a Christian. What he means by Christian education is not school. He's talking about the more you learn about the Lord, the more you learn His Word. As you do what Paul says, that I may know Him and the power of His resurrection and the fellowship of His sufferings, being made conformable unto His death. When you are like that, it's a gradual unveiling of God. The word unveiling is like the word revelation, and I don't mean the book of Revelation, the revealing of God, when He reveals Himself to you and you learn more and more and more about Him. As you did when you first met your wife or you first met your husband and you were enamored with them and you wanted to learn more and more about them and you asked questions. What's your favorite color? What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite author? And you learn more and more and more about that person. And as you did, you fell deeper and deeper in love. It's the same way with the Lord. The more we learn about Him, the deeper that relationship grows with Him. That's what we're talking about here. The pulpit commentary says, those who are pure in heart and care not for such sights as lead men into sin are unconsciously preparing themselves for the great spiritual sight, the beatific vision of God. Isaac Newton is famous for having written a lot of, he was quite the scientist and wrote a lot of things about a lot of different things, but a lot of people connect him with the apple falling off the tree and hitting him on the head, and he discovered gravity, as if nobody knew about it before then. But he was a well-known, he was a scientist and a Christian to boot. But one day he wanted to look at the sun, but he knew he shouldn't look at it directly. He was smart enough to know that, so he set up a mirror and looked at the image of the sun in the mirror. Well, I'm sure the mirrors back then weren't as good as the mirrors today, but still it was sufficient enough that when he looked at it, even just a brief time, the glare from the sun, the brightness of the sun burned into his eyes, and he was temporarily blinded for several days. And even after that, for quite a period of time, when he closed his eyes or thought about the sun, that white spot would be right there in his vision. Have you ever done that before? Looked at something really bright? Back when I was a printer and we used to burn plates on an arc burner, sometimes I'd accidentally catch a glimpse of that arc in the gap around the arc burner, and that would blind me for hours, just a glimpse of that. Like a welder. If you're a welder, you know what I'm talking about. That's where there were those heavy masks and that thick tinted glass. But when you look at the sun, even briefly, even momentarily, it can blind you for days. And so that is what he realized when he saw the sun, and it made him think about Moses back in the Old Testament when he caught a glimpse of God, and his face shone. And it also made him realize that the people in Israel, going through the wilderness, in the presence of God, even though God's presence was shielded from them in the form of a pillar of smoke by day and a pillar of fire by night. And he was in the tabernacle where they were not allowed to go, dwelling beneath the cherubims upon the mercy seat. He said that even then, dwelling in the midst of God, only 2 of them survived that trek through the wilderness. If they had such a difficult time surviving in God's presence, even without the brightness of God's glory, how can we survive God's presence unless we are like him? Catching just a glimpse of him can burn an indelible image in our eyes. In Revelation chapter 22, verse 4, we see, and they shall see his face, and his name shall be in their foreheads. We shall be able to see his face. Do you remember what God said to Moses? He said, no man can see my face and live. But if I'm going to put you in a cleft of the rock and I'll cover you there with my hand, which is where a song about that comes from. And he says, you'll be able to see my hinder parts. And what he means by that is the lesser part of my glory. And even that is what caused Moses' face to shine. But he says that no man can see my face and live. So how is this possible? Well, John already answered that. It's because we shall be like him. We'll be in a glorified body. This body can't take it. That brightness will destroy us. That's God's purity. It's God's holiness. We as impure, pure, finite, mortal beings cannot tolerate the brightness of the Lord. This is how the Lord is going to destroy the Antichrist and his enemies at his second coming. With the brightness of his coming, we see that in 2 Thessalonians. We saw a foreshadowing of that in August 1945. August the 6th, August the 9th. Harry and I went over to the Air Force Museum on, when was it? Last Friday, a week ago Friday. One of the exhibits in the Air Force Museum is the B-29 that was named Boxcar because the pilot was a man named Bach, B-O-C-K, so they call it the Boxcar. That was the plane that delivered the little boy atomic bomb and dropped it on Nagasaki. Destroyed the entire city, one bomb. Not much longer than this table right here. John Hersey, years ago, wrote a book called Hiroshima, describing the after effects of the nuclear bomb on that city. In that book, he described what I've talked about several times here, is what they call the Hiroshima shadows. That is the ground zero for the Hiroshima bomb, the Fat Man bomb, was a T-shaped bridge over a couple of the rivers that are there in Hiroshima. It was a very distinctive bridge that looked like this, sort of like the Y Bridge in Zanesville. There were people on that bridge on that bright, sunny Sunday morning, about 8 o'clock. There was a guy on a bicycle. There was a woman with a baby carriage, with the baby in the carriage. There were other people walking across the bridge. And the reason we know that is because their images were burned into the concrete of the bridge. When the bomb exploded above them, 1,600 feet above ground, by the way, those people were vaporized. They weren't blown apart. They were vaporized. Their bodies absorbed just enough of the light and the heat that they cast a shadow on the concrete. The concrete all around them was burnt whiter than them. Their bodies shielded, and there's an image of a woman pushing a baby carriage. There's a guy on a bicycle. That's the power of light. God is light. Right? He's the light of the world. The light that God has is from His purity, His holiness, His righteousness. And you and I can't tolerate that unless we are in a glorified body like His, and that's how we shall see His face. We are to be holy as God is holy. Eventually, we will be in body as well as in soul. That hasn't happened yet. It won't until you're raptured and get your glorified body. But in the meantime, we are to be in soul and spirit just as holy as He is. Other people around us who don't know the Lord should see the brightness of God in us. His brightness, not mine, not yours. We have no righteousness of our own. It's His that needs to be seen in us. So that's what he means by seeing God. That's your first point there. Number 2 is seeing God's work around us. Seeing God's work around us. Ellicott's commentary for English readers says this: purity of heart, so far as it exists, brings with it the power of seeing more than others see in all through which God reveals Himself. The beauty of nature, the inward light, the moral order of the world, the written word of God, and the life and teaching of Christ. These are things that the people around us don't see. They don't get it. They think the book of God, the Bible, is fable and myth. They think the world made itself. They think you and I are animals because we evolved, they say, from animals. And that's why they act like animals. You and I can see, should see, the world as God sees it. We should have a Christian worldview. Charles Spurgeon said this: the man whose heart is pure will be able to see God in nature. When the heart is clean, he will hear God's footfall everywhere in the garden of the earth in the cool of the day. He will hear God's voice in the tempest, sounding in peal on peal from the tops of the mountains. He will behold the Lord walking on the great and mighty waters, or see Him in every leaf that trembles in the breeze. Once get the heart right, and then God can be seen everywhere. To an impure heart, God cannot be seen anywhere. But to a pure heart, God is to be seen everywhere. I don't mean that we worship nature, but we see God's handiwork everywhere. I saw the craziest video this past week on YouTube. I don't remember how I found out about it, but I clicked on it, and there were these people sitting in the forest. And there were loggers in the forest who had cut down some trees. And these folks were weeping and wailing, and I don't overstate that. They were actually weeping and wailing and screaming and crying, almost uncontrollably sobbing because of the trees being cut down. And they were talking to the trees and saying how sorry they were that those trees were cut down, that they felt such pain, that they felt such loneliness and such hurt and such rejection. And I'm sorry, I know I have no compassion at all, but I had to laugh as I watched this video. I love trees. The reason we bought our house and moved in where we are is because of all the trees that we had. We had 29 trees in that lot when we moved in. We've had to cut some down because of storm damage, because of disease, and the ash borer or whatever it was. So we've lost some of our biggest and best trees. So I hated to do that. I really hate to lose trees. But it's ridiculous to cry over a tree getting cut down and thinking it feels pain and loneliness and rejection because we cut it down. Trees grow back, don't they? Yeah, my goodness. There are more trees in existence now, historians tell us, than there were in Ohio 100 years ago. I know it's hard to believe. I didn't believe it at first either, but that's true. But what I'm saying is we don't worship nature. God doesn't live in the trees. God made the trees. God made everything, including the air we breathe, the bodies we live in, the food we eat, the building we're worshiping in. I mean, he didn't make this building. He made the materials that made the building. And all of us will eventually return to the ground from whence we came. We are biodegradable, right? Everything around us is. Some of it takes longer than others, but it's all biodegradable. But God made nature, so as a believer, you see God's work all around us. And number 3, we see God work all around us. There's a little difference there. We see God's work, but we also see God working around us. That's very important to see as well. God is on the throne. I know the world seems crazy right now, and it is. Not the first time. Might be the last time. But as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man, and I think we're there. But in spite of where we are in the world, God is still on the throne. Don't lose sight of that. In World War II, if you had been living in Germany under Hitler and the Nazis, you would have thought, well, where is God? And many did. But God was still on the throne. Help was on the way. It was no place to live at that time, not a good place to be, but the Lord was still on the throne. And it's still the same way today. God is on the throne. Help is on the way. Just don't know when it's going to arrive, but the Lord knows, and He will arrive exactly on time. So this thought of seeing God work everywhere has to do with having a Christian worldview again. A Christian worldview means seeing the world the way God sees it, not the way we want to see it or the way some people around us tell us to look at it. Go back to holiness again. When I define holiness, what is holiness? Remember, holiness consists in thinking as God thinks and willing as God wills. Remember that? That's having a Christian worldview. Remember what the Lord taught us to pray in Matthew chapter 6? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's the way we're to think. Thy kingdom come. You want God's kingdom to come, right? And by the way, when it comes, you and I who are saved will be a part of that kingdom. We will rule and reign with Christ for 1,000 years. But he also says, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. No one in heaven disobeys God. No one in heaven is unholy. We want that here as well. And it has to start with me. I can't ask for God's will to be done in people in Congress or the Supreme Court if I'm not willing to let it start here first. It has to start here first. When I'm where I should be, then I can ask for others to do the right thing. Now, don't get me wrong, I pray for our leaders. And we all should pray for our leaders. If we're not praying for our leaders, we have no right to complain about them. So we should be praying for them, but we should start here first. Matthew chapter 6, verse 10, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. You know, when we say be pure in heart, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. You know what we're saying, and this is point number 3, by the way. What we're saying is that happiness and holiness go together. Kids, there's a question on your blank about that. Happiness and holiness go together. Are you happy? Don't put your hand up. You don't have to because I can see it on your face. Oh, that's better. Are you happy? Are you holy? Are you holy? Because one affects the other. You realize that? One affects the other. If you're a Christian, there's two things you should consider. Number one, if you're not happy, perhaps it's because you're not holy. Number two, if you're not happy, if you're not holy, you're not going to be happy. Remember Paul in Romans chapter 7? He was the most miserable Christian on the planet when he was away from God and living in the flesh. He says, the things I want to do, I don't do. The things I don't want to do, I do. He was miserable because he was not where God wanted him to be. He was not completely surrendered, sold out, not dead to self, as he told us to do in Romans 6:11. Instead, he was very, very unhappy. He was miserable. But you say, hey, I'm pretty good most of the time. I'm not as holy as I want to be. I'm not where I want to be in my relationship with the Lord like I'd like to be, but I'm sure better than most. I'm way ahead of most people. I'm not 100%. Okay, you're not 100%. You know, back in the 60s, I believe it was, there was a soap company. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Ivory Soap, who had an advertisement campaign saying they were 99.4% pure. So pure it floats, they said. Anybody remember that campaign? Okay, you're dating yourself just like I am, okay? But then they started wondering, after a while, you know, they don't use that campaign anymore. They started thinking after a while, 99.4% pure. How pure is that? So another company helped them with the research and said, okay, what if this was only 99% pure? What if that was only 99% pure? And here's what they came up with. If everything in the world operated at 99% efficiency, they discovered that drinking water would be unsafe 1 hour out of every month. If planes were 99% efficient, 2 planes would crash land each day at Chicago's O'Hare Airport. That's just one airport. And this was back in the 60s. It'd be a lot more now. 2 planes would crash every day. 500 surgeries would be botched every week. 20,000 prescriptions would be improperly filled each year. What if your spouse said, well, I'm 99% faithful to you? Would you be okay with that? 99% efficiency is not acceptable in those matters. It's not acceptable in holiness and righteousness either. We need to be holy to God. Are you happy with 99%? Are you willing to give God all that you have in you, your whole life? I talked about trees a little while ago. We've lost some trees because of different things. We had a tree in the backyard, a big maple tree, huge maple tree. We had raccoons living in the top of it there, and they would go down in a hole in the top. Eventually, half of it died. We had it cut down because the bark was falling off, so we knew it was kind of dying. When they cut it down, they left the stump the stump was about this high off the ground. I didn't have them take the stump out. The stump was hollow. There was only about this much wood around the outside of the tree, and this tree was pretty big tree, about this wide. There was a huge hole right in the middle of this tree, going all the way up, which is why the raccoons could come in. They could have gone all the way down into the stump and underground. They went 3 feet down into the ground. It was still rotted out. That tree was going to fall over pretty soon in the nearest storm. Wasn't anything to hold it up. What causes that to happen? Well, there's a combination of things. Bugs can get in there and start eating away at it. Other animals can get in there and start burrowing and enlarging their nest inside of there. Eventually, the rot takes place, and the rot continues. There's all kinds of factors that cause that to happen. But a storm can come by and knock that tree over very, very easily. And it's no different with us. If you're unholy in here, if you're rotten in the core, it weakens you. And when a storm comes up, you can't stand. We need to be holy inside. That will make us happy as well, because the two do go together. You know, back in medieval days, monks and nuns would hide in convents and cloisters and try to get away from the world. There's still some around the world in different places, but they tried to get away from the world, shut the world completely out, and not allow anybody to come in. They would put gates on the enclosures and not let any outside people come in because they wanted to be separate from the world and they wanted to be holy, as holy as they could possibly be, and just pray. And some cloisters and different groups, they wouldn't even speak to each other. No conversation at all. And some of those are still in existence around the world. But you know what? They don't work. There's all kinds of tales coming out of places like that, of sin that takes place behind those walls. Why? Because they take their sinful souls in there with them. It's just a change in location. That's all it is. We are to be in the world, but not of the world. Jesus Christ was the most holy and righteous person who ever walked the planet. Yet he didn't cloister himself off from other people. He mixed with people as much as he possibly could. But he was separate from the world. Separation in the Bible is not isolation, it's insulation. We are to insulate ourselves from the world around us and the effects of sin around us. And how do you do that? It's by being holy on the inside. How do you do that? Stay in the book. Stay close to the Lord. Seek him, not just for what he gives you, but for who he is. Seek him for his face. Seek him for his presence. And bask in God's glory and bask in God's presence as much as you can. And seek to be holy. We live in a world that desperately needs to see what a Christian can be. The word Christian means Christ-like. How many Christ-like Christians do you know? For me, that's going down. I see fewer and fewer Christ-like Christians all the time. I see Christians on Facebook all the time with drinks in their hands and cuss words they use, and there's no holiness there. There's no separation from the world. There's no difference between these Christians and the non-Christians. How do you tell the difference? Well, I'm a Christian. I go to Crossroads Baptist Church. Well, if you're one of those kind of Christians, please take Crossroads off your Facebook page. You're not doing the rest of us any favors. You're certainly not doing the Lord any favors. We need to be a holy people. You know, the Lord cut down Gideon's army from, 22,000? No, 30,000 down to 300. He could do more with less. Now, I'm not telling anybody to take a hike or anything, but the Lord can do more with fewer holy Christians than more unholy Christians. We could lower all kinds of standards here at Crossroads and have thousands and thousands of people. Build all kinds of buildings. Have bowling alleys. We could have, we could do all kinds of stuff. I could think of things. We could have a movie theater in here. We could do all kinds of stuff. We had a huge building and church and lots of people. But that's not what we're all about. That's not what we're all about. We're here to glorify the Lord and serve him. And in order to be equipped for that, we need to be holy. Amen? We are to be a holy and peculiar people. And if you are holy, you will be peculiar. Amen? But that's a good place to be. I'm going to ask you to stand with your heads bowed and eyes closed. The last question for you kids on the bottom is, how can you be holy? There's no right answer to that one. You have to answer that yourselves. Turn the sheet over and answer it on the back. Any answer is the right answer. As long as you answer that question, you'll get the $200. But you think about how you can be holy. How you can be holy. And us adults, we need to be thinking about that as well. This is a time to honor the Lord by our responses. I don't know what he's speaking to you about in your heart. I don't need to know. It's none of my business. This is between you and God. But I'm going to ask you to respond to what he's saying to you right now. Father, thank you for what you're doing, what you're going to do in our hearts and our lives. Father, I pray that as we yield ourselves these next few minutes to you, may you be honored through our responses. May we truly be a holy people, different from the people around us. Not necessarily in the way we dress or look, the way we cut our hair, what kind of music we listen to, but Father, help us in our attitudes, in our hearts, our desires, our ambitions. Father, I pray that you'd help us to be like you. May your will be done right now. We ask in Jesus' name for his sake with thanksgiving. Amen. If you don't know the Lord as your Savior, this is a good time to get that right too. This is a way to establish that relationship with the Lord and learn how to be holy for him. seated for just a moment, just a couple of things I want to mention. Let me start off on a bit of a sad note. Eileen Walters passed away this week. Many of you know who Eileen Walters was, and some of you know her as Mary Walters. She was Eileen Mary, or Mary Eileen Walters. She was in a rest home the last couple of years, which is why a number of us weren't able to get a hold of her the last couple of years. But she went home to be with the Lord, which is a good thing, and she's fully restored in her hearing now and her health. So that's a good thing. But we don't know anything about funeral arrangements yet. I'm going to ask you to watch for the dispatch. It will come out in that. The funeral will be probably 2 weeks away. So we're just waiting for details, and they will appear in the dispatch. And the family will find out at the same time we will. That's a long story. But anyway, keep watching for that, because I don't have any more information for you about that. Also, I mentioned that folks from Northeast Baptist Church are with us today. We want to thank you for being with us today. We hope you make them feel welcome and show gratitude to them for their extraordinary act of generosity in donating their property to us. I want to keep you posted on the progress with that property. I know you guys are interested in that as well. There's another church interested in buying that property, which is great. We'd like to keep it as a church if we could. That church is going to be coming to look at the property this week with an inspector, and so they're very interested in that. So please pray for that. The Lord will send a right buyer at the right price, because there are some obligations we have to take care of. The top priority is to take care of their pastor. That's the key thing we want to take care of, and hopefully have enough to left over to pay for our mortgage and cover that as well. So keep that in prayer if you would, please. So that's ongoing, and as I said, I will keep you updated on that progress as it goes. All right, let's be dismissed in a word of prayer and ask God to bless us as we go our various ways. Brother David Adams, if you would, close this prayer, please. Amen. And one last thing I forgot to mention, tonight at 6 o'clock we will be having 20 and communion at the end of the service. We haven't had communion here since the beginning of March. So talk about holiness. Yeah, we need to do that, and that'll help us keep close to the Lord too as well. So plan to be here tonight for that. We will not be passing the plates, so you don't have to worry about that. We've got self-contained communion cups and wafers in that. So that's how we'll be doing it tonight. So plan to join us tonight at the evening service. God bless you. We'll see you tonight.
Since the Savior found me, pardoned all my sin, I have had the joy of living hope within. Gone is all the shame and sorrow of the past. They're underneath the precious blood of Christ at last.